Hello again. Thanks for watching Loma Linda Broadcasting. You want to call the kids because we're going to do a program for the kids today. My name is Jim Burr. I'm an inventor, designed telescopes in Lakewood, Colorado, and big telescopes, actually, very big telescopes. But I have a ministry traveling, lecturing on the heavens, the Hubble, the Bible, the Big Bang. And today we're going to do a special program for the children. And I discovered the adults love it too, because a lot of times if I'm in churches doing the church service, I'll do the children's story. And for the children's story, we'll show them some of the beautiful pictures of little animals and so forth from the earth, and we'll show their counterparts in the sky, because a lot of times when you look in the clouds in the sky, you see things that remind you of, an elephant, or that looks like a tree. So kids, as you're watching, hopefully you're gathered around. And have you ever seen that, where you've looked up in the sky at a cloud and says, my, that looks like, that looks like a chicken, or that looks like a whatever. And so when we look through telescopes at our Milky Way galaxy, and we look sometimes at other galaxies, remind us of certain things too. And so we've given them names for, So what I've done here is today, the first one we're going to start out with is the Horsehead Nebula. And this is an area in Orion that just looks like a horse head, but it is huge. I mean, this thing is like really, really big, and it's basically a cloud of dust. In the background, there's light behind the horse head, glowing light, but you see that whole area there is the Horsehead Nebula. It's interstellar dust cloud, just dust that makes up that picture. And you could put 100 of our solar systems right across the bridle area there. Our sun with all the planets would fit right across the bridle area. And that's about 5, I think, let's see if we have, no, we don't have that on there. The distance is actually on that. But it is huge. The whole upper part, I think, is about 30 light years. So it takes light about 30 years from go to the top to the bottom of that. So that's just the first one we're going to look at. And we have, hopefully the kids have all gathered around the TV now. And I want to show you what happens sometimes in the sky, because we have big stars that explode, sort of. And when they do, they shoot out these little rings. And if you watch the rings, you can actually see them change. And a lot like the picture we got coming up, you'll see smoke rings. It looks like smoke rings, actually called a supernova eruption, that you'll see in our next slide. And there it is. You see how the ring from this explosion has expanded outward. And you can watch that move over the years. If you took pictures of that, you could take a picture every 10 years, play it back on a computer, and find out when that star popped. The biggest stars seem to use up their fuel and expand bigger and bigger and bigger until they get to the point where they can't support this shell, and then they erupt. And sometimes they actually shoot out jets instead of those little smoke rings. And this, I don't know, these come out so fast whether the camera can see it or not. I don't know, but yeah, they're going pretty fast. So you'll see in some of the pictures you have, we'll actually point out some jets that are shooting out. So to back up again, what happens is there's some really big stars out there, and they seem to use up their fuel like a balloon. They get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then we get this big nuclear eruption. They send out this beautiful gas. And when this happens, you can actually see them. Sometimes these stars in the daytime, you can actually see these stars in the daytime for a little while, because they're so bright when this happens. And then they dim over a few months. So let's have some fun and take a look at little creatures. Here we have a seagull, beautiful seagull, and we have a nebula. We have a cloud in the sky that kind of looks like a seagull. And you see there's the head of the seagull, and there's the wing of the seagull, there's the other wing of the seagull. Look at all the stars in the background. This is part of our Milky Way galaxy. Our sun is just one of all of these stars. And It's a lot of hydrogen gas, a lot of cloudy gaseous area in the sky, and so that would be the Seagull Nebula. Okay, now we have an ant, a close-up picture of an ant. And we have a nebula in our Milky Way galaxy that they call the Ant Nebula. And so here it is, the Ant Nebula. And this one, actually, when it popped, we think there's a very strong magnetic field right in the center. Instead of going like a balloon and getting bigger and bigger, it shot out in opposite directions. And we could actually look at our magnetic field of the Earth. If we looked at the Earth and we looked at the North Pole and the South Pole and how it creates Van Allen belts around the Earth, the Van Allen belts look just like this because they don't go like this, but rather they follow the curvature of the magnetic lines of the Earth, and they go out making these loops, just like you saw in the Ant Nebula. Let's see what we have next. There's our website if you're interested, heavensdeclare.org, and that you can get all of these pictures. You can get all of the pictures there on our website. If you click on the picture of the day from the Hubble picture of the day, every day we have a new picture. And if you will scroll down to calendar, if you'll click on calendar below the picture of the day, you'll see calendar. If you click on that, then you will get all the Hubble pictures for the last 15 years. Every year you get 12 calendar, 12 months. And if you click on each month, you get 30 thumbnails. So you get over 300 Hubble pictures every year for the past, I think, about 15 years. So go to heavensdeclare.org and click on Picture of the Day, and you can download all of the beautiful pictures and many more than what we're showing you today. Well, our next picture, what do we have? We got an Eskimo. You know, we have a cloud in the sky that looks like an Eskimo. You see a little cold nose and little cold lips there, and it's got a parka on. Now, this is what the Eskimo looks like if you were to go out and take a picture of it as an amateur with a telescope. This is kind of like what it would look like in a small telescope. But the Hubble telescope just does wonderful things with the exploding stars in the sky. And so here is the Eskimo Nebula, a picture that the Hubble has taken. And you'll see some of those jets shooting out there and those streamers coming off the supernova eruption. And the star in the center, whenever this happens, we always have a star remaining in the center. There's always a core star, a dwarf star, a neutron star, a pulsar, some sort of a small star always remains. And you see it there. It still gives off the solar wind. We have a wind coming from our sun called the solar wind at hundreds of miles an hour. And so that solar wind coming off of the star causes those streamers that you see out to the edges there. So this is the Eskimo Nebula. Again, this is part of our Milky Way galaxy, the Eskimo Nebula. And we have hundreds of these. I think we have about 200 pictures in this series. And we're going to look at the Cat's Eye Nebula. So here we got a couple of pictures of cat's eyes, and here is the Cat's Eye Nebula. This is one of those exploded stars. You can see a center star. Always, as I said, there's always a star remains in the center. And the Bible talks about that. It says in Psalm 147, because he is strong in power, not one faileth. And so there you see the Cat's Eye Nebula. This is the kind of a picture you'd get from an amateur telescope with an average camera. But the Hubble zoomed in on the Cat's Eye, and here the picture the Hubble got of Cat's Eye in black and white. Now you see those jets that shoot out that I was telling you about, those streamers going out from each side way ahead of the expanding cloud. You see the center star remaining there. This is all part of our Milky Way galaxy, where our sun is part of 100 billion stars. Our sun is just an average star, nothing special, nothing very big about our sun. It's just kind of pretty much an average star, and so it's just one of 100 billion stars, or maybe now they're thinking maybe even 200 billion stars. And if you were going to count the stars in our Milky Way galaxy, and you could count like one every second, it would take you over 3,000 years to count 100 billion stars. In fact, next time you go down the street and you see a McDonald's sign, right now they're running a sign that it says they have sold 99 billion hamburgers. So that would be maybe even close to what we think the stars are in our Milky Way galaxy. Actually, the newest study just came out in the last 6 months saying maybe the galaxy is Milky Way is much bigger than we thought. Maybe we have 200 billion stars. If there were 200 billion stars and you started counting when Adam was on Earth, you would just now being finished counting the stars, one every second, if there were 200 billion. So we have the next picture coming up showing us the cat's eye in color. So here's the cat's eye in black and white. Here's the cat's eye in color. Isn't that a beautiful sight to see? You know, the Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians 15:41 that our eyes haven't seen, our ears haven't heard, it hasn't even entered into the heart of man the things that God is preparing for them that love Him. And so I think we're getting to see a little peek from the Hubble Space Telescope of the things that God has prepared for them that love Him. You know, the Bible says in Revelation 14 that the redeemed from the earth are going to follow the Lamb wherever He goes. The Bible says that who's the Lamb? Well, that's Christ. Who's the redeemed from the earth? That's me and you, I hope. That each one of you will be redeemed from the earth, that you'll be the ones that will follow Jesus. And it says that we'll follow the Lamb. That's Christ, wherever He goes. And the Bible says, so shall we ever be with the Lord. I bet Jesus just can't wait to take you to show you all the beautiful things He has created in the heavens. And it's just amazing. So in our next picture, we're going to go to this. By the way, if you're just joining us, today is what we're calling the children's story, the astronomy for children. And I discovered adults love it too because they see so many beautiful pictures. I had a call from some friends that got the satellite dish, and they started watching the program. They said, we didn't know there was such beauty there in the heavens. And most of the beauty we see is in our Milky Way galaxy because it's close to us. It's still a long ways away. But when we look in other galaxies, it's really hard for us to see the other galaxies are so far away. To see the nebula and the cloudy areas in there, we don't really see very much of that, excuse me, in other galaxies. So most of what we're showing you today is in our Milky Way galaxy or maybe some other galaxies. So this is the, if you're just joining us, this is the Cat's Eye Nebula in color. Here it was in black and white. And now we're going to move on. Here it is we have, other than the Hubble telescope, we have the Spitzer telescope, we have the Chandra telescope. This would be an infrared picture of the Cat's Eye Nebula. Now we have a crab. Oh, how interesting the crabs are. They are so well designed. It is just amazing. I love to watch them and investigate them. But we have something in the sky that's been called the Crab Nebula. And here it is. This is one of those stars that exploded. This one exploded in July 4th, 1,000 years ago, 1054, almost 1,000 years ago now. The Crab Nebula exploded, and it's in the constellation of Taurus. The Chinese made a careful record of this star because when this thing exploded, and it was a star that nobody really noticed much the night before, on that particular night this thing just blew up and was so bright, just the brightest thing. It was brighter than Venus, brighter than everything in the sky, except the sun, of course, and maybe the moon, but it could actually be seen in the daytime. It was so bright. And typically they fade away in a few months, but for a few weeks at least, it was visible in the daytime. And this shell is getting bigger and bigger. As you look at it, these clouds every day are expanding outward, yet they're so far away in a lifetime you would never notice the expansion. But if you took a picture, and they did take a picture of this one, they took a picture every 15 years, and then they played it back on a computer to verify when it exploded. So that is called the Crab Nebula in the constellation of Taurus. Let's take a look at our next picture. Here we have the mountains. That's kind of where I live, in the mountains of Colorado. But here we have the mountains of creation. Isn't that a beautiful sight of our Milky Way galaxy? Again, in our Milky Way galaxy, they're called the mountains of creation. Now that's called mountains of creation by people who believe in evolution. That's kind of an interesting thought. Here we see a cartwheel, and here's the Cartwheel Galaxy. Now this is another galaxy. This is not part of our Milky Way galaxy, but now we're looking at another galaxy. In our next picture, we see chocolate chips. Anybody out there like chocolate chips? I kind of like chocolate chips, particularly chocolate chip cookies. If I come to your church, you can make some chocolate chip cookies. That would be great. Well, do you know we have what they call chocolate chips on Mars? Here's the surface of the planet Mars, and it is covered with all kinds of different stuff. We're going to show you a whole lot of pictures of different stuff on the surface of Mars, and we have no idea what made these. They're not really chocolate chips. They just remind us, of course, of chocolate chips. So that is the surface of Mars. Something has caused that. And do you know that we have a happy face on Mars? Here's the happy face on Mars. And here is a fortune cookie. Do you know that we have fortune cookies on Mars? Once again, we don't really have fortune cookies. We just have some surface detail there that reminds us of fortune cookies. And we even have worms on Mars. Here you see little streaks that remind us of little worms on the planet Mars. Now we're going to take another look at the Horsehead Nebula. Here's a Horsehead. Here's another shot of the Horsehead Nebula in Orion. This is very interesting because it takes light about 1,500 years, maybe 1,300 years to get here from the Horsehead Nebula in Orion. It is located right on the bottom belt star of Orion. Orion is a constellation. It's a mighty man. We could actually draw a stick figure around Orion. So if you could imagine, we have stars on there, and you can see his head, his shoulders. You know, he has a belt across his waist. He carries, as a hunter, so he carries a sword on his hip, and so you see the leg stars, you see his sword, you see 3 stars across his belt. And then you see the 2 shoulder stars, which are very bright. Those are the main stars of the constellation of Orion. And if we look at the bottom belt star, because it's kind of on a little slope, the bottom belt star, this is where the Horsehead Nebula is, right next to that, just to the left. If we had a wider view, you'd see the Horsehead Nebula, or actually the bottom belt star. But notice this thick clouds. These are dark, dense, obscuring clouds. The whole bottom part of the picture, you see there's no stars there. There's only, you could count the stars. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. From the middle of the picture over, you can actually only see about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stars there. And so that thick cloud is actually covering up, the background light, so that you see there is light streaming out from the back of that, and that whole lower part of the picture is dark, dense, obscuring clouds. Every book you read will tell you those are dark, dense, obscuring clouds. Do you suppose that's where the New Jerusalem is, behind that Horsehead Nebula? We're told by Ellen White that the New Jerusalem comes through the opening in Orion, and we'll show you that in this series. You're going to see the Flame Nebula where there's an opening. But you see in the bottom, let's look at the bottom half of that picture on the left. How many stars are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but no more than 10 stars. But look at the stars up in the background behind this thick cloud. And when Moses came down from the mountain, his face was shining like so painful that people couldn't look at it. He had to put a veil over his face because it was so bright. And God covered the whole mountain with a thick cloud. So when you look at Orion, you wonder, could that be where this city is? That God, would he have to put a thick cloud over this city of light? The New Jerusalem is a city of light. We don't need there's no need of sun or moon there because the city is a city of light. So if the city is so bright, would he have to put a veil over it? And when I look at that, I think maybe that's just where that New Jerusalem is, behind that thick cloud, because it's covering up something, and there's a lot of light coming out from behind it. So it's kind of fun to think of that, isn't it? Okay, we will move on. And here we have the Horsehead Nebula in color. And again, you see the light coming out and that thick cloud from behind there. Okay, it's about 30 trillion miles tall, or 5 light years. So it takes light about 5 years to travel across that Horsehead. So you see this is huge. This is really, really big. And there's another close-up view of the Horsehead Nebula in Orion. Okay, we've got some eggs here. Here is the Egg Nebula. Now we're back. This is in our Milky Way galaxy again, and that's been called the Egg Nebula. Well, here's a beautiful rose. Do you know God has put a beautiful rose in the sky? This is the Rosette Nebula, called the Rosette. And the Bible says, heaven is my throne and earth is my footstool. All these things my hands have made. God made everything. Jesus actually was a creator. In John 1:1, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. He was in the beginning with Him. All things were made by Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made. The Bible says, by the word of the Lord were the heavens made. So we see that Jesus was the creator that made all these beautiful things. And He says that our eyes haven't seen, our ears haven't heard, it hasn't even entered into the heart of man the things which God has made for them that love Him. By the way, this is one picture that is not accurate color. There is color here, and there's a lot of red here, but this, for research purposes, this particular picture was taken with 4 different filters on the telescope. They took 4 different pictures, and they wanted to put a filter to see which gases were present there, and then each picture was assigned a different color. So this particular picture is not true color. Most of the pictures we have are true color. Well, here we have a black widow spider, and here is the Black Widow Nebula. This again is part of our Milky Way galaxy. You see all the stars in the area around there. Okay, moving on. Here is an eye, and here is the eye in the sky. This is part of actually the Hourglass Nebula. It's a close-up view of the Hourglass Nebula. And somebody said that was the eye of God. I said I would never repeat that in public. Moving on, here's a blinking eye, and here's the Blinking Eye Nebula. We don't actually see it blink, and I'm not sure how it got its name as the Blinking Eye Nebula, but that's what they call it, the Blinking Eye. Here is the Bubble Nebula, and here is the Hubble bubble in the sky. So this is a picture the Hubble took of the Bubble Nebula. Here we see a bride with a veil, and here is the bridal veil, or this is the Veil Nebula. Isn't that a beautiful sight to see? Again, now this is one of those supernova remnants. If you could imagine, this is the upper part of a cloud. Those little smoke rings that I blew originally here, this is an upper part of that one of those rings. We don't see the whole veil, we don't see the whole circle, but this is an expanding cloud that came from a bubble like we saw. Here is the fox. Here is a fox that likes to come to our backyard to get fed in the cold winter usually. And here is the Fox Fir Nebula. Now if you could see in the middle of the picture there and up to the upper left, you'll see what looks like the little nose of a fox and maybe kind of an eye of a fox. So that is the Fox Fir Nebula. In our next picture we have a stingray, and here is the Stingray Nebula. Isn't that beautiful? When you see that beautiful sight, the Stingray Nebula. I bet you Jesus just can't wait to take you there to show you firsthand all the beautiful things He's created in the heavens. When something happens to you, don't you have to run and tell your parents? Even old people sometimes. And my kids still call me, Daddy, I just had to tell somebody. They'll get on the phone, guess what happened today? I got to tell somebody. And when we see the beautiful things of the heaven, I think Jesus just can't wait to tell somebody. He's got to show you the beauties that He has created. Isn't that going to be a wonderful time when we can be in heaven and when we can see all the wonderful creation that God has created? But let's continue to move along. We've still got a few more minutes in our program. Now where we go with the stingray. Here is a cone. We have a cone nebula in the sky. This just happens to be just to the east of Orion, and it's a beautiful sight to see in our Milky Way galaxy, the Cone Nebula. Here we have a bug, and here is the Bug Nebula. And then we have a red spider. Here is a Red Spider Nebula. The next picture is a closer-up view of the Red Spider Nebula from the Hubble Space Telescope. Now we have a pizza. I'm sure nobody out there likes pizza. Is there? Anybody likes pizza? Well, look at this moon around Jupiter. This is Io, around Jupiter, and it has a lot of volcanic activity, but it kind of looks like a pizza pie, doesn't it? Okay, and here we have a heart. Well, we have the Heart Nebula in our Milky Way galaxy. This is another one of those pictures. This is not true color. This color, again, was done for research, and so they took filters and took pictures, 4 pictures probably, 3 to 4, and each picture they gave it a different color so they could, because of the filter, they could tell exactly which gases are present there. Here we have the Flame Nebula. Okay, we got these mixed up. Here's a flame, okay, and here's the Flame Nebula. This is in Orion. This is right next to the Horsehead Nebula, just to the east or just to the left of the Horsehead Nebula. And here we have an ugly tarantula. Does anybody not like spiders? The Tarantula Nebula. Here's the tarantula in the sky from the Spitzer Space Telescope. Okay, that's in the that's really part of our a companion galaxy. It's not really in the Milky Way galaxy. It is in the Magellanic Clouds, which are kind of a little companion galaxy of us. Here we have the butterfly, and here's the Butterfly Nebula. Isn't that a beautiful sight to see? The Butterfly Nebula. Well, our time, I see, is about gone for today's program, so we're going to have to pick up astronomy for the children again next week, it looks like, because we still have over 100 pictures to share with you. Today we only got 50, let's see, what did we get, 50 or 60 pictures today. And so we've got more pictures to go, so we're going to probably do another program next week, Astronomy for Children. But once again, I want to thank you for watching as we share the universe and the beauties our God has created for us. I want you to be there in heaven so we can all be together and enjoy His wonderful creation. Thanks again for watching Loma Linda Broadcasting. We'll see you next week.
Hello, good friend. This is Don Pate from Between the Lines. It is such a privilege for us to share the ministry of LLBN with our program Discover.Now. When we chose to align ourselves with these folks, it was